that. Senator Durbin.
Thank you, Chairman Grassley. I've been honored to serve on this Judiciary Committee for more than 20 years. We have our differences, serious differences. You can hear them manifest in the debate on the floor as well as in the committee and on specific legislation. But I've always been heartened by the fact that when it came to certain aspects of law enforcement and law and order and crime, we find common ground. Democrats and Republicans agree. It's a tradition in Police Week, for example, for us to produce a package of bills to support the police and to do it in a responsible way. I've always been impressed by the fact that we put politics aside for that purpose. The hearing yesterday, I felt, was too partisan. I said as much before the committee yesterday. I hope that we can get back to this long-standing tradition of trying to find a bipartisan basis to fight violent crime. I do not accept the premise that if you have a Democratic mayor or a Democratic governor, you're going to be quote-unquote soft on crime. I don't believe there's evidence to support that. And there are certainly red counties, red states with crime statistics which are appalling, as well as blue states. I hope we can get back to working together. If we're going to have a discussion of that issue, though, let's make sure we tell the whole story. President Trump's budget has cut hundreds of millions of dollars in public safety funding for state and local law enforcement. That is not a political statement, that is a fact. President Trump has also diverted thousands of FBI, DEA, and ATF agents from their critical missions to carry out the president's mass deportation agenda. Not surprisingly, as reported in the press and brought up yesterday, federal drug prosecutions this year under the Trump administration have dropped to the lowest levels in decades. The experts who go after the conspirators and designers of this narcotics network are real experts, and takes it real effort to find the evidence to convict. They are now being diverted into the mass deportation. How are we doing on mass deportation? 70% of the people that have been detained under the Trump mass deportation banner have no criminal record. No criminal record. Rapists, murderers, terrorists, criminally insane, no criminal record. And of course, President Trump granted full and unconditioned pardons to nearly 1,600 of the January 6th insurrectionists, including more than 600 charged with assaulting or impeding law enforcement. Who has respect for our law enforcement? The one who initiated this unconditional pardon? Many of these pardoned rioters have been charged or convicted of other violent offenses since the president gave them a pardon. One, Jared Wise, was filmed on January 6th, encouraging his fellow rioters in the Capitol to attack Metropolitan Police officers and, quote, kill them. His words, kill them. Mr. Weiss now has a new job. Guess what he's doing? Senior advisor at the Department of Justice. Nothing says tough on crime quite like hiring someone who participated in the assault of law enforcement officers as a leader in America's highest law enforcement agency. Instead of taking concrete actions to improve public safety, President Trump is weaponizing federal law enforcement to seek vengeance against his perceived political enemies. Acting U.S. Attorney for the Eastern District of Virginia, Eric Siebert, a Republican appointed by President Trump, did not believe there was sufficient evidence to bring criminal charges against New York Attorney General Letitia James or former FBI Director James Comey. What was the reward for this Trump nominee? He was forced to resign, and President Trump installed his former personal attorney, someone with no prosecutorial experience, to indict James Comey despite the weakness of the case. If you want a little exercise in how you pursue these matters, take a look at the Monday New York Times. There is a lengthy article trying to explain the circumstances that led to the indictment of James Comey. I read it twice, still trying to understand the muddle of information and facts that's been presented. It's no wonder that a U.S. attorney would say, I can't find the evidence to convict. Since January 20th, 2017, President Trump has shown time and again he believes the federal government exists in service of himself and his political goals. When he lost the 2020 election, President Trump tried to use the might of the Department of Justice to overturn the election results. And when he failed at that, he turned a mob loose on the Capitol. Now in his second term, he will not suffer anyone who attempts to rein in his abuses. In July, President Trump fired the acting U.S. Attorney for the Eastern District of California simply because that U.S. Attorney advised U.S. Border Patrol to comply with a federal court order. When I started asking that question of judicial nominees, will you comply with a court order, there were some members of this committee on the other side of the table who said, of course you would comply. It is in doubt, and sadly in doubt in some cases now. We've heard from whistleblowers that a senior Trump DOJ appointee advised another agency to actually violate a court order. Instead of pursuing effective crime prevention, President Trump plays strongman on TV. He has deployed hundreds of troops to American cities, threatened to send more. Yesterday, he and Secretary Hegseth summoned all the major career military officers of the United States from around the world to a political pep rally at Quantico, where he said he wanted to use American cities as, quote, training grounds for the military. Think of that for a moment. Using American military to use our cities as training ground for the military. And of course, he said, we're going into Chicago very soon. I don't know if you saw the videos that portrayed what these officials are doing with the Department of Homeland Security, but marching down Michigan Avenue in full combat dress with long rifles is an embarrassment to me. That is not what America should be all about. This is dangerous and un-American. It should be imposed by every member. If it happened in your state or your hometown, you'd think twice about looking the other way. It's time for us to get together on a bipartisan basis and support the rule of law and law enforcement. The American people deserve law enforcement that serves them and is not weaponized to serve the whims of a political agenda. I yield.
Yeah. Before I go